It has been almost 6 years since Animal Crossing New Horizons first released on the Nintendo Switch, and of course we just got the Switch 2 edition announcement and the Update 3.0 version for that game a couple days ago. But what I am here to talk about now is what does that mean for the future of Animal Crossing? I think many people, including myself, anticipated Animal Crossing to be one of the first big titles on the Nintendo Switch 2 within one of the first couple years of this console's life. But now, how can anyone say that an Animal Crossing game is going to release anytime soon when they're definitely going to be putting the Switch 2 edition in the limelight? Animal Crossing New Horizons will be the Switch 2 Animal Crossing for the foreseeable future. So what does this mean for the future of Animal Crossing? Well, first of all, I think this says a lot about where Nintendo is right now in terms of their mindset on what type of games they're going to release. We have had a huge, big game problem on the Nintendo Switch 2, and that has really dominated the discussion. People were disappointed with Mario Kart and didn't think that was worthy of a big title. Donkey Kong Bonanza was great, but then it got DLC that people said were totally overpriced, and then there was controversy even surrounding that. Drag X Drive wasn't that big, a bunch of Switch 2 editions that were old games. Now we have upcoming games that weren't all that big, and then a Pokemon game that was already on the Switch 1. So the Switch 2 has not had a lot of big game exclusives in the eyes of the masses, or at least in the eyes of the vocal minority on Twitter. And yet, I think this is a big part of Nintendo's plan. Heading into this year, one of the things that I had wished for in my wish list video back starting at the beginning of the year was that Nintendo would space out their big releases more than they did back in 2017. In 2017, we got some of the best games ever made, all in a singular year. Started off with Breath of the Wild, then we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, then we got ARMS, then we got Mario plus Rabbids, then we got Super Mario Odyssey, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. We had so many banger games that year from first-party studios directly from Nintendo. And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe technically was an old game, but most people didn't have a Wii U, so it was more of a big, impactful release than it would have been otherwise if the Wii U had succeeded and Mario Kart 8 was out there for a lot more people. It was essentially a brand new game to the masses. And that's kind of the problem that we're facing right now with the Switch and the Switch 2. We're seeing Nintendo heavily lean upon Switch 2 editions to support the lineup, to make it look as though there are more games coming out than there actually are. And of course, these are still new releases. These do still count as games that people are going to buy and are going to have fun with. But at the same time, coming from a console that was over 150 million in sales, that console was a total success. And all of these games have already been played by the audience that have the Switch 2 right now, the core fans. The core fans have already played all of these older games, and they're not going to care as much about a Switch 2 edition for the games that they already purchased and already played. And I know this was a huge topic of discussion going from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. People were very upset at all the ports, and a lot of people, I think, were going to bat for Nintendo on the port side of things, saying that more re-releases are always a good thing. More games, more options, more ways to play, more accessibility. It's great. Having these games continue to reach newer and newer generations are always going to be a great thing. But here's the big difference. The big difference between the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch and now the Nintendo Switch to the Nintendo Switch 2 is backwards compatibility. Of course, you could not put a disc into your Nintendo Switch. You could not play any of those old games on your Switch. And then they decided to get rid of the Virtual Console in favor for the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, in which you can get old games through that way. Now on the Switch to Switch 2, it's much different. You can definitely, absolutely get a Nintendo Switch game and put it straight into your Switch 2 and play it that way. And some of these will even have free upgrades. Mario Odyssey is one of the big ones I always point to. You could go to the store right now, or any sort of garage sale, or any place that they're selling Super Mario Odyssey for the Switch. You could buy it probably on sale or for cheap, put it in your Switch 2, and it will run at 4K 60 FPS right out the gate, and you just didn't even have to pay much for it. Now, looking at these Switch 2 editions, you're going to be shelling out $80 if you want a game like Super Mario Party Jamboree on your Nintendo Switch 2. Or you could just pay $60 and not worry about the extra content, just get the old game and put it in the new console. There's just a really big problem with this particular business model. They're trying to sell us games that we already have access to on this console, except with a few more features and upgraded graphics. That is not necessarily bad all on its own. In fact, I think it's phenomenal that they're trying to preserve these games and uphold them to the standards that they believed they were at when they were released, except now they look even better. That pure vision from the initial release of these games is now being seen in a better light. But the problem with that is they're using these as if they're brand new titles, and they're not. These should be supplementary, and they're not supplementary. We're seeing these games be the game of a month. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, for example, was the game in the month of August, and that should not be the case. It just shouldn't. But at the same time, there is a clear argument to be made that this isn't that big of a deal. The Nintendo Switch 2 just released in June. People are acting as if it's been out for years and that we have absolutely no games to play. It's been about 6 months. It has been about 6 months, my friend, and we already have 2 massive titles in Mario Kart and Donkey Kong, with Kirby Air Riders looking bigger and bigger by the day coming out soon, and Hyrule Warriors literally less than a week away. There certainly are a lot of new games being put around these Switch 2 editions, but now we get back to the Animal Crossing debacle and what this means for the future of this franchise and for pretty much every franchise that gets a Switch 2 edition. If you wanted a Switch 2 edition of your favorite game on the Switch 2, what is that going to mean for the next game in that franchise? If all of a sudden, in the middle of February, they decide to give us a Nintendo Direct and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate gets a Switch 2 edition with a little bit of new content and upgraded graphics, is that telling for how long we're going to have to wait for a Smash Bros? I already think Smash is a long ways away compared to most people, but still, is that going to be seen as something that's frustrating for fans of the series to be like, yeah, we now know if we're not getting a Switch 2 edition, we're probably getting a new game soon, but if we do get a Switch 2 edition, that's indicative of the future of that franchise. Thus far, all the Switch 2 editions that we have gotten have been games that I was pretty sure that those franchises were not getting new games anytime soon. We got Breath and Tears on the Nintendo Switch 2 with their upgraded graphics and a couple new smartphone content. Zelda, it makes sense. That franchise isn't getting a new 3D game for quite some time. They just need time to develop those games, and it always takes years and years for them to do it. Then we got Super Mario Party Jamboree. Of course, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a new Super Mario Party game anytime soon, but at the same time, we did just get one the year prior on the Nintendo Switch, and so it makes sense. Mario Party on the Switch 2, Jamboree Switch 2 edition, you don't need a new one anytime soon. Kirby and the Forgotten Land also made sense. That wasn't a franchise that was getting regular releases anyways, so bring it up to modern standards, add some more content, and boom, you're good to go. Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Here's an interesting thing about that one. The 2D series had been dormant for quite some time prior to Wonder's release. They really tried to go back and change up that formula for the better and change it probably permanently. And so moving forward, I don't know if they're going to make sure that every single release is full of creativity and differences, or if they've found somewhat of a model that they want to try to replicate moving forward, that Wonder style. I don't know, but at the same time, it makes sense now to think, okay, they've given us a Switch 2 edition, that probably means we're not getting a 2D Mario for quite some time. Here we are now with Animal Crossing New Horizons. All of these previous Switch 2 editions made sense to say, yes, this is a stopgap before a brand new game comes out. Now, do we have to question if it's the same thing for Animal Crossing? Are we waiting at least 2 to 3 more years until we even see a glimpse of a new Animal Crossing? Or will this not matter? Will we get a September Direct in 2026, this time about next year, and they'll reveal it and it just won't even be a big deal? What is the most likely scenario? Well, to answer that question, let's tune into our inner blathers here. Let's go back to history. Let's look at the past here and see what Animal Crossing history might indicate for the future of the franchise. Back in the GameCube was when we got the very first release of the Animal Crossing series. Animal Crossing, released in 2001, sold 2.2 million units. 4 years later, we got Animal Crossing Wild World on the DS. 3 years later, we got Animal Crossing City Folk on the Wii. So that was about 7 years in between mainline consoles for the home consoles. Between GameCube and Wii, it was about 7 years. Then we got on the 3DS Animal Crossing New Leaf. That was the big Animal Crossing title for pretty much most people playing Animal Crossing at the time, but still that was a handheld console. And they were definitely trying to balance between handheld and home at the time, but still most of the big series got their big games on the home consoles, and then the 3DS and the handheld stuff did get big stuff. Like, I would definitely include this as a mainline game, but still, it was not a home console. So if you really wanted to do it that way, if you really wanted to say the last time they got a home console release between releases, you got City Folk on the Wii in 2008, and then New Horizons 12 years later was the next technical home console. We're not going to do that though. I think New Leaf is pretty much a mainline game. So it was about 7 years in between release from New Leaf to New Horizons. We don't count Amiibo Festival, no one should count that. So between all of these years here, now we are getting 6 years later, Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 edition on the Switch 2. That 6 years would typically be enough time for them to have developed a completely new game and for us to get one on the Switch 2 built from the ground up for this console. But here's the problem. They are going to make sure that this generation lasts a long time. The Nintendo Switch came out in 2017, was a huge success, and continued to last until this year, 2025. It was an 8-year console life cycle, and I would not be shocked if the Nintendo Switch 2 was a 10-year console life cycle. This is one of their reasonings as to why they are not releasing big games at such a rapid pace like they did back in 2017. They are trying to space out their big games to make sure every single year we get about 2 to 3 huge games. This year, it's only been half a year, right? And we've gotten Mario Kart and Donkey Kong. If you want to count Kirby, if you want to count Hyrule Warriors, Metroid Prime 4, all these other releases, even the Pokemon Legends ZA game, those are technically still big games. If you look forward to the future of this console, if it's 10 more years of Nintendo Switch 2 we have to look forward to, Nintendo wants to make sure every single year has a banger. And maybe close to the end of that life cycle, we won't get as many big games, many big bangers, because they want to save those for the Switch 3 or whatever comes next for Nintendo. And so that would probably mean that if we are looking to the future here, about 8 years in between big releases is what we can look forward to for most of these franchises. And that is disparaging in my opinion, and especially for Animal Crossing, who has been a huge success on the Nintendo Switch. This franchise has new life, going from the highest selling game being New Leaf at 13 million units, now up to 48 million units with Animal Crossing New Horizons. I think Nintendo realized that over 48 million people buying this game means that people cared about this game. And of course, there were circumstances surrounding that game's success, and what that meant for the future is going to be different for everyone. But for this game specifically, they probably just wanted to bring it back, add some more content to it, and say, hey, we respect you guys for buying all of this products. Thank you so much. Here's another free upgrade, even though they were saying in the past no more updates were coming. So now we get a little bit closer to an answer to the question, what is the future of Animal Crossing and this series on the Nintendo Switch 2? When are we getting a new game? Well, if we look at what we have just talked about, all these sales numbers, everything that they had said in the past, this is something that is really kind of making me a little afraid for the franchise's future. Animal Crossing New Horizons had a couple years of updates, and that was about it. 2022 was the last year that they gave us a brand new update, and in that final trailer, they said very clearly this was the final update. That was about 4 years ago now that they decided, internally and externally, they communicated very clearly saying that this game was not getting any more updates. Then they decided to go back on that. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Well, in my opinion, it means that they're not making a new Animal Crossing game right now. It means that the next one isn't coming within the next year or two, or maybe even the next year, 2 or 3. I think this means that they have moved on to other projects, they have worked on other things, because the Animal Crossing studio doesn't just make Animal Crossings. That studio makes several different banger franchises, all of which that they can't keep up with at the same time. So they have to really rotate in between these 3 franchises to make sure that they get the best experience for everyone. EPD5 is the studio that makes the Animal Crossing games. What have they been up to lately? Drag X Drive was made by EPD5. Splatoon Raiders upcoming will be made by EPD5, and of course Splatoon 3, which also has gotten a recent update and a Switch 2 upgrade for free, is now made by EPD5. So this is what they are juggling: Animal Crossing and Splatoon, 2 massive franchises that have taken a new life on the Switch, and now on the Switch 2 has a chance to grow into truly gargantuan pillars for this company. And Splatoon is one of the biggest things in Japan right now. It is huge, and of course Animal Crossing is a worldwide phenomenon, so balancing those two has to be an insane task. And I'm sure Splatoon 4 is on its way as well, but now we know Splatoon Raiders, that spin-off, is coming at some point. They didn't even give us a year, so maybe it's not even a 2026 release, which would be crazy if they announced it this year and then didn't even give it to us next year. But still, this is stuff that they've been working on. And of course, Drag X Drive probably didn't take them hundreds and hundreds of hours of development. That is another game that they had to have been working on. So all of this gap here, we have Splatoon 3 in 2022, Animal Crossing New Horizons in 2020, and then it's been about 3 to 5 years for both franchises getting a new installment. Sometimes it's hard for me to come to any sort of conclusion in these videos in which I am speculating about what Nintendo could possibly be doing or thinking, but I typically end up going with whatever my gut feels is right. And in this case, I'm going to use something a little bit more personal. I care about Luigi's Mansion 3, I love Luigi's Mansion as a franchise, and I cannot wait for Luigi's Mansion 4. If all of a sudden, Nintendo decided to give us a Switch 2 edition for Luigi's Mansion 3, I would genuinely be incredibly excited for that game, coming over to the Switch 2, probably getting a little bit more content, and then being spruced up in terms of graphical fidelity. But at the same time, part of me would feel upset. Part of me would be a little bit pained because my gut tells me that means we wouldn't be getting a Luigi's Mansion 4 anytime soon. For Animal Crossing, I am a huge fan of New Horizons, but I don't know a ton about the franchise itself. New Horizons was my first game, so if I were an Animal Crossing fan, if I were to see the Switch 2 edition, I would probably have mixed reactions. The update itself is phenomenal. It makes this game probably the ultimate Animal Crossing experience for anyone loving these franchises and loving these games. And the problem with that is there's not going to be a new game soon. This means we're probably in for a 10-year gap between New Horizons and whatever the original Switch 2 Animal Crossing is. I think this bodes not very well for the future of Animal Crossing, not necessarily in a negative standpoint from sales perspectives, from franchise popularity. I mean, heck, the trailer for this Switch 2 edition and for this update has over 1 million views in 24 hours. This franchise is going to be fine. But in terms of new releases, Nintendo has not given us a reason yet to believe that Switch 2 editions are nothing more than just little releases. So we have to assume that they are stopgaps for those franchises. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe could have been the perfect Switch 2 edition, but of course they were working on a new Mario Kart, so they didn't give us a Switch 2 edition of that game, they gave us the brand new title. Rather than giving us a Switch 2 edition of Mario Odyssey, they gave us a free upgrade. So that tells me that they're working on a new 3D Mario. It tells me that it's coming soon, probably next year. And if you look at other franchises that have not gotten a Switch 2 edition yet, that probably means their studios are working on new games as well. These Switch 2 editions may not look like much for people who have already played the original games, but they certainly do take up a lot of development time and are going to be reasons why these games, the new ones, aren't coming out as quick as possible. It's different than a simple port. They're adding content. That means that's more development time from scratch. And it's probably one of the biggest arguments as to why ports were better on the Switch than Switch 2 editions were for the Switch 2. Because now, if you look at it, it makes a lot of sense to say this franchise probably isn't getting a new game anytime soon. Now, here is the hope. Here is the silver lining for you to look at if you are an Animal Crossing fan or a fan of any of these games that got Switch 2 editions and you want new franchises, new games on your console. Nintendo released 3 Mario RPGs within the span of a year. They gave us Mario Thousand Year Door Remake. They gave us Mario and Luigi Brothership. And then they gave us the Super Mario RPG Remake, all within the span of 365 days. 3 RPG Mario franchises all coming out within the same year is not the best for Nintendo. In terms of marketing, I can't imagine that is their best play in terms of how they wanted to spread those games out, because it leads to a lot of cannibalization of sales. But what it does say is that they're not always going to go according to what we would say is logical. Animal Crossing could very well get a brand new game revealed next year, releasing in early 2027, because it doesn't matter. Nintendo can do whatever they want. And here is something that might be a little scary, but I think is also a little bit of a possibility. Maybe New Horizons is the game they want to continue to support. Maybe they are going to continue updating New Horizons, and moving forward, that's going to be the Animal Crossing game. But that would just feel odd, wouldn't it? Because they gave us 4 years of nothing and said, this is it, we're done with this game. But then they reversed it. Why did they reverse it? I think only time can tell, but the reversal means something. And I think it means that Animal Crossing is a ways away. So if you have been watching all of these Animal Crossing related videos these past couple days, I appreciate you so much. I think now you can probably understand why I didn't do all of this in one singular video. All these 3 topics I talked about definitely needed their own videos and their own care and love poured into them. So make sure you like this video. If you enjoyed, press that subscribe button to join the channel. Click that notification bell to know exactly when my videos release. And please consider joining my membership program to get early access to all of my videos. And of course, be able to support me as an individual content creator. Make sure you click on the left side of your screen to see my initial video covering the Animal Crossing update, and click on the right side of your screen to see my Animal Crossing video talking about the price. Thank you very much for making it to the end of the video. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.